All right, we are ready to begin. We have everyone here. Commissioner Rice is right around the corner, but I think we will start, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, which Commissioner Tarkanian will lead us in.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to this special budget meeting, and we're pleased to be able to take our budget to the next step. We'll begin with public comment. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. We have a timer system. When the yellow light goes off, there's 30 seconds left. When the red light goes off, time is up. Do we have any public comment this morning? Seeing none, I will close public comment. And we will turn to our approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Gardner.
I move for the approval of the proposed agenda as presented.
It's been moved by Commissioner Gardner, seconded by Commissioner Rice. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, our agenda is approved. The agenda has one item on it, well, two, I guess. Discussion on the designation of Deputy Public Guardian Casey Myers as acting Douglas County Public Guardian until a formal appointment is made in accordance with Douglas County Code Chapter 2.02 due to the resignation of Nicole Thomas effective May 2nd, 2025. Brooke Adey was going to present this, but I believe we have Chief Operating Officer Kathy Lewis.
Great, thank you. Kathy Lewis for the record. I'm going to present this really quick. As you can see, Nicole Thomas has submitted her resignation. It is effective Friday, so we appreciate in allowing you guys to allowing us to put this on today's agenda. We would like the board to consider appointing Casey Myers as the acting Douglas County Public Guardian. And I think I'll turn it over to Casey if she has a couple words.
Casey Myers, Deputy Guardian for the record. I'm willing to step into this position until it's filled. I have been not Deputy Guardian, but I've been working for the Douglas County Public Guardian for just about 12 years, 2 years for Claudette Springmeyer, and then almost 10 years for Douglas County. I've maintained my certifications and my continuing education through the National Guardianship Association as well as the Center for Guardianship Excellence. What's most important to me is the continuity of care and a smooth transition for our clients.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Gardner.
All I would say is that this position, Ms. Myers, is a very unsung position in our county, and not a lot of people really understand what they do and how they do it and the importance of that activity in our county. So I appreciate your previous activity as deputy and your willingness to step up to this position as we work through the process. So just thank you, okay? And thank you in the department for what you bring to the community. So, yeah.
Is there a motion?
No, we need public comment. It's possible.
Oh, yeah. Is there public comment? Okay, good.
Whoops, just going to throw the pen around. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Amber Handy of Handy Legal Services. I am the current legal counsel for the Public Guardian's Office, and so I've had the pleasure to work with both Casey, Nicole, and Sally for the last 2.5 years. I fully support this transition, and I would recommend and request that your honors approve this, approve Casey as the acting. She is very well qualified. She knows all of her clients, all of their estates, and she is the best candidate at this point. So thank you, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Handy. Appreciate your perspective and sharing that with us. Is there any other public comment? I will close public comment and look for a motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, I move for the designation of Deputy Public Guardian Casey Myers as acting Douglas County Public Guardian until a formal appointment is made in accordance with Chapter 2.2 of the Douglas County Code due to the resignation of Nicole Thomas effective May 2nd, 2025, and thank Nicole Thomas for her many years of service to Douglas County in this role.
It's been moved by Commissioner Gardner, seconded by Commissioner Rice. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously, which is always a good thing. Thank you for your continued service and for stepping up. And we do wish Nicole Thomas the very best and very much appreciate her passion for the people she served. So thank you. We will move to our next agenda item for possible action, discussion to provide staff direction in the preparation of the fiscal year 25-26 budgets for all Douglas County and Douglas County Redevelopment Agency funds. Discussion may include a general overview and update from March 24th, 25th, 31st, and April 1st, 2025 budget hearings of the Douglas County budget on the following: General Fund, all departments including supplemental requests; Special Revenue Funds, including supplemental requests; Debt Service Funds; Enterprise Funds, including supplemental requests; Internal Service Funds, including supplemental requests; Capital Project Funds, including supplemental requests; and Redevelopment Agency Funds and Capital Improvement Projects. We have with us Kathy Lewis, our Chief Operating Officer, and I think we have Jenny Cartwright here. There you are, in the corner, who is our Finance Manager. Thank you both for being here, and we'll turn it to you.
Thank you very much. I'm Kathy Lewis for the record. Not only do we have Jenny Cartwright in the audience, I think we have the finance staff, the accountants, and our accounting manager online listening to and taking notes from what they hear. So thank you. This update is the in-between update. About a month ago, a little less than a month ago, we listened to department presentations. And so today is an update from where we are in the budget presentations. Our next hearing will be to adopt the budget. But in between that, if we need to have another meeting, we can look at scheduling one, but we'll go through where we're at right now. Just as a reminder of the calendar, starting in January, March, departments and elected officials started preparing their budgets. Not today, you can tell I copied this slide from the presentations, but in March, at the end of March, we did the budget presentations. We did submit the tentative budget to the state on their state forms. And then today we're here for a review of budget updates and look at the CIP requests. And then May 27th is when we're scheduled to adopt the budget, and which needs to be adopted and submitted by June 2nd. Today, we'll talk about supplemental requests, CIP projects, and then any changes in the budget since the budget hearings. Supplemental requests, the detail of the supplemental requests were not only outlined during the budget presentations, but they have been uploaded as supplemental material for this meeting. Today, we are seeking the board direction on how you would like us to build in and what we would like us to build into the next year's budget. We'll always continue to seek opportunities to fund supplemental requests throughout the fiscal year. So these are always front and center, knowing that they're priorities, and we'll keep those in mind. And I always appreciate department directors and elected officials for seeking alternative ways to fund their requests, which you'll see soon for that. I thought maybe we'd go page by page, Chairwoman, would you like me to present all the supplementals, go through them quickly, and then your thoughts, or would you like me to go page by page, if that makes sense?
I like the idea of getting an overview first, because if we take them page by page, we're going to say, yeah, we want to do that to every single one of them.
That sounds good. In the general fund, there are no increased requests for FTE, but there are 3 requests to change current FTE to different positions. There are 2 in the courts to make from 2 deputy court clerks to make them deputy court clerks to deputy court clerk seniors, and then 1 a maintenance operation, I think senior to a supervisor position. So no new FTE, but changes in FTE. We are recommending to add those to the budget, but would love to hear your thoughts. If you remember right, I think at the beginning of April, we heard a presentation from the state on the Nevada Youth License Fund. We're currently supporting that program, but not building anything into next year's budget at this time. There are, the clerk treasurer presented that there are some ballot marketing devices, new election equipment, depending on what happens at the national level, whether the current equipment we have would meet that directive from the president or not. So we are seeking, which tomorrow we'll talk about the adjusted opening fund balance, but seeking to use one-time funding for this one-time purchase of adjusted opening fund balance. And then the security cameras that the clerk treasurer also presented, she believes that she has savings in this year's budget to be able to fund that. So that is a supplemental that we can take off the list.
Before we go off that page, Ms. Lewis, I know that in the discussions with our clerk treasurer, she has asked for this to be in the budget. However, she is, to my understanding, she's indicated that she would only look to expend these funds if there was a mandate or a direct funding source from the state. Is that still the fact or the case?
That is my understanding also.
Okay.
If tomorrow, at tomorrow's discussion, when we talk about the adjusted opening fund balance, if that is your desire, we would put that in a project fund. The clerk treasurer would still need to come forward with the actual project to get it approved before those expenditures happened.
So I was up at the state legislature yesterday. I did see these machines. I didn't actually participate or put hands on, but I did see these machines. It appears that they're good items and would help our public feel more at ease when they leave the process of voting in person. Understanding that also, if a person tries to walk out of the room with this marked up ballot, that it becomes invalid, okay, because that's their method. So, and obviously that's a process of education of our public. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear on exactly, because that's a heavy lift, 187,000. So, but I appreciate that. So thank you, Ms. Bergens. Also, I see you stepped into the room. So I didn't really have any. So obviously you.
I apologize, I missed a little bit of that as I was walking from my office down here. But I believe you were talking about the potential for the legislature to fund the equipment. However, the conversations that I'm having right now with the legislature is that there will not be funding at the state level. So I appreciate the fact that that Douglas County Management CFO have understood that this is a priority for our office and helped us to find the funding to be able to purchase it. But agreed that if the funding does come through from the state, we will absolutely take advantage of that funding. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Thank you for the clarification.
Other general fund supplemental requests that were presented by departments are the next couple ones are from the sheriff's office. The sheriff presented that the printers for patrol are on its last legs, and so they were looking at a printer and a cell phone combination to replace these. The sheriff did understand our budget constraints, and he has indicated that he was continue to look for other continue to evaluate the options and the needs of the Sheriff's Department. The same with the Axion contract. Great presentation by the sheriff during the budget presentation, but he is continuing to evaluate his options in there before he brings anything forward. So these three we're recommending to put on hold right now while he evaluates that. But the sheriff did talk also about a jail control board that's on its last legs too. It's a one-time purchase to upgrade that control board. We're recommending, again, at tomorrow's discussion, to use the adjusted opening fund balance piece of that. Community development asked for $3,000 for travel to help with their permitting software installation. And so we're recommending adding that to the project budget for permitting software. We also presented a housing needs assessment, and then would love to hear discussion from the board, but right now continue to evaluate our options, not necessarily put anything in the budget for this, but continue to evaluate our options for this. And then we talked about what we think will be an ongoing discussion is significant leave payouts as people retire. But at this time, we like to continue to see if we can manage that within our approved budget and not set aside new budget for that.
That entails somebody retires and then is this the payments to the
It would be payments for the annual leave that they haven't used, or long-term employees who I think have worked here 15 plus years are entitled to a percentage of their sick leave payout, not the whole amount. So it'd be those payouts for that. So we're talking employees who have been here many, many years that have built those banks up. And then not in the general fund, we have a couple requests. 911 surcharge. At the last meeting, you as a board approved the increase in the surcharge fee. 911 wants to look at possibly hiring an auditor to make sure we're getting all the fees that we are entitled to. And so I'd like to put some money for some auditing services. And then the next ones are enterprise funds. And so enterprise funds, if you remember right, they are not supported by general fund. They're not supported by taxpayer dollars. They are supported by user fees in those funds. And it's a capital or a supplemental request that they put forward. So these funds are supported by the user fees in those funds. The airport would like to take one of the maintenance positions that they currently have that I think the board approved a year ago, realizing they'd only need one maintenance person and not two, but make an office specialist out of that second one. So an exchange of a position. And then the water fund would like to look at purchasing an aluminum carport and a mini excavator, and then the airport's updating their master plan. So those are
So as I
requests.
understand it, once again, all of these funds, those are already in their operating budgets, right? So it's just, they're coming to us, asking us permission to basically expend these funds? Is that how I see that?
They haven't been built into the budget yet, but they have funds that support it within their budget.
Okay. But, and they'll still have reserves. I mean, they'll have,
Correct.
yeah, it's not going to decrease their, okay.
Correct.
Okay, so now is the time for us to share thoughts on any of these items that we've just heard.
I just have a quick question. Probably should have asked it when Ms. Bergens was here, but so she said that's where we are with those voting machines. So that means if they are mandated, we will have to pay them, but there won't be, the county budget will have to, it'll come out of the county budget and get possibly reimbursed if the state offers funding at some point. Is that where we're at? Or is it put on as a temporary basis? Should it be? So could you just define where those are?
I'm hoping the clerk treasurer is listening. I will do my best to answer, but then she can correct me. My understanding is our current machines that we have now are getting older, and so of course we need to look at a process to replace them. But if the president's executive order stays, as he's recently stated with the elections, our printers would not be in compliance with that.
It's very convenient to have my office right down the hall. Amy Bergens for the record. We are going to purchase the new equipment, whether it's mandated or not. What I'm looking for is funding from the state to assist in purchasing them. However, we don't believe that they're going to provide funding across the state, but we're still watching for it and hopeful. Then we're going to use our funding from the county to purchase them. So,
And just to follow that up to its conclusion, do we expect to have an opening fund balance that would accommodate that?
We do. This is actually adjusted opening fund balance from last year. So it's hasn't
Right,
been allocated that. So I have not brought forward to the board to have that discussion of using those funds. It's a little over $3 million when we went through it in January. So yes, we would have those.
Could you state that slower so I can understand what?
Sorry. These are unallocated funds from last fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. When I presented the audit in January, we went through what was unallocated, wasn't reserved, wasn't brought forward from projects, and it was a little over $3 million. At tomorrow's board meeting, I do have an action item, and it's administrative, to talk about that balance and how you want to spend that, I
Yeah,
guess.
it seems like that's money is what we're going to try to use to pay for whatever supplemental request we approve.
I think it's a good use of one-time supplemental requests, yes.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, Commissioner Gardner?
So, okay, and so as I understand it, it's similar to what is happening, as has happened with our vehicles for the Sheriff's Department, where they didn't spend funds on vehicles, and so they had funds carry over because the vehicles weren't available. So now they actually went way over budget this year, but it was based on the previous year's non-spending, right? So in this case, and so in conversations with our clerk treasurer, I understand that when you, and most of our, we're finding out that most of our older residents are the ones that tend to like the old system of going in and voting on a machine. And physically doing that. And it has a small paper process that's next to that device that shows you that you're supposed to review before you close out your ballot. And so as I understood it, those are tending to fail. And also they're difficult to read as well. I tend to vote in person on the machine because I want to experience that. But they're very small. They're only like 4 by 6, and they're very small. They're hard to read, and so that creates a problem for our elderly residents as well in the county. This will replace that process, I understand, and actually print out a ballot that an individual can then review and make sure that it's correct. And if it's not correct, there's a method of going back to your staff at the election time and saying, I made a mistake, or it looks like this is a mistake, and I need to redo this. Is that it gives you the second opportunity, right?
Correct.
Okay.
yeah, we would be able to, at that point, before you have put it through the tabulator, which will be at the exit, you will have the opportunity to be able to spoil that ballot if you marked the wrong person, or there was any issue with who was on the ballot. Like it was, we'd have the ability to be able to spoil it. It's very rare that happens. So Carson City uses a very similar type system, and they had, I talked to the clerk recorder there yesterday, and he said that they had maybe 10 or 12 during the general election. It's very rare that they have, an issue like that. But what I will say is, and this is a very drawn out conversation, so I will try and keep it as short as possible, but more than happy to discuss in detail. There was an executive order that came down from the president about elections. Part of that executive order says that you cannot use a QR code on your voting, whether it's the ballot or what have you. The VVPAT, the voter verified paper audit trail that we use now, which is the printer next to the voting equipment, has a QR on it. There's no way to modify the VVPAT to make it in compliance. And even though I know that There are lawsuits against the executive order. We don't need to go into all of that. We do know that the federal government is in charge of the elections, the EAC, which sets the regulations for voting equipment, and we feel that this will become federal regulation before the June 2026 primary election. And so instead of waiting until the last minute to try and get our hands on equipment where there could potentially be issues in obtaining it, the conversations that I've had with management is I feel like we need to get up ahead of this and go ahead and find the funding for this. Part of the funding of the unanticipated opening fund balance that Ms. Lewis will talk about tomorrow is that we do get reimbursements from the state every year on our elections, and those go back into the general fund. I know that that is part of those fund balances that they will talk about tomorrow to be able to fund this. So appreciate the conversation and kind of went into the weeds, but more than happy to discuss further if you have more questions.
I just want to make sure that our public understands that should we do this and should you put those in place, if you turn that in, you can't leave the room without turning that in. And if you all of a sudden get outside the room after turning it in, you have no recourse after that point in time. After you turn it in, you have no recourse other than the vote's the vote.
There will be a lot
We're
of
getting
voter
a little
education.
astray
Okay.
from the budget.
Yes, yes, there will be a lot of voter education, and I appreciate your want and desire to understand it.
Thanks. All right. Are there any other items? I have one that I want to bring up, but anyone else first? All right. I'm comfortable with all of this. I think this is great. I would like the housing needs assessment to be done. And it says county will continue to evaluate options. Since it's a one-time cost, maybe it could also come out of the adjusted opening fund balance.
I agree, and I will bring that up tomorrow when we have that discussion. I appreciate, Chairwoman. The one thing I don't think I made clear is we're asking for a direction, but the approval of the adjusted opening fund balance and those expenditures will happen tomorrow. So I will definitely add that to the presentation when we talk about that for the approval of that. So I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, should we, do you want action on that so far? No, okay. All right. County Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Davidson, County Manager, for the record. Thank you for humoring me with this. I was trying to figure out when is the most appropriate time to make this statement, and hindsight's 2020. We're having important conversations over the next 2 days. This afternoon, you're going to receive a presentation on roads, and we're going to advocate for additional funding for roads. And the reason why I'm bringing this up right now is we just had a whole conversation about adjusted opening fund balance and that there's $3 million we didn't spend. And I'm expecting that the public is going to go, well, why wouldn't we just use that for roads? One, I think it's important for context to understand that adjusted opening fund balance is a result of the efforts of our departments across this county to save and to not spend in last fiscal year's budget. So this is savings from a fiscal year budget ago, because remember, about a year ago, we were hitting the panic button, very concerned that our revenues were not going to meet our budget projections. And so thankfully, due to the efforts of our department heads, we were able to save that much money. I do not expect that we will be able to have this level of ongoing savings in the county. One, and two, although $3 million sounds like a lot of money to a lot of people, and in fact, it is a lot of money to Douglas County, when you look at it proportionally to our operating budget in the general fund, that is not a lot of savings. That is still a very, very tight budget. So thank you for allowing me to give that additional context, because I do think it is relevant to additional discussions we will have later today. Thank you.
So I had a question concerning that. So all of this money, that's whatever those initials you said, are from savings. None was from greater than expected revenue. How did the revenue come in last year?
Correct. So we actually underperformed in revenue last year. Our revenue did not meet our projections by, I believe it was either 300 or 400,000.
So we basically saved then $3.4 million 400,000, not just 3 million, because we had to cover.
Yes, because we had to cover the difference. Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
And it
so-
could have been way worse.
So today, I mean, recently, we've been seeing how the budgets for the casinos, or the revenue for the casinos and so forth, are far less than they anticipated. How's that going to affect us with this upcoming budget and the projections that we've had?
Madam Chair, Jennifer Davidson, County Manager, for the record. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Tarkanian. We are working closely with the Room Tax Fund. We've been in conversations with Ms. Adie, and we are monitoring trends. We do anticipate that we are going to fall short in the Room Tax Fund, that we will not meet the projections. And the last number that Kathy and I were looking at in our office was somewhere between 300 to 400,000 under what we were expecting to receive this fiscal year.
Final question then, wouldn't it be prudent to withhold $300 or $400 of last year's savings for this year's shortfall?
Good question, Commissioner. Yes. Dollars, yeah, $300. Yes, good question and good thoughts. And I want to make sure that we're aware of open meeting law. We will discuss in greater detail how those funds will be allocated, and among the many options this board will have is to set aside some of this money into stabilization and some contingency. Additionally, because we have been in close conversations with Ms. Adie, she is hitting pause on a number of maintenance projects that were budgeted this fiscal year and waiting to see whether or not we should proceed on those, waiting to pull the trigger, so to speak. So we have both options.
Just to clarify, Miss Adie, because that room tax is a large part of her revenue, of the revenue of parks.
Yes, room tax makes up approximately 16%, I believe. No, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. There's a portion that makes up 16%. We can get you the percentage, but it's a large proportion of their budget. Miss Adie understands room tax funding is pretty volatile. It tends to fluctuate by millions of dollars either way. And so that's why she waits to do a lot of her capital improvement and major maintenance and repairs projects until closer to the end of the fiscal year to ensure, in fact, we have the funding to proceed with those things.
Good. Back to you, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you for this discussion. I've already made notes of a couple slides I want to add to tomorrow's presentation about the adjusted operating fund balance. So we'll talk about more of that later. Okay. The next section we have is to go through the capital projects. The 5-year capital project plan has been uploaded as supplemental material. We are again seeking direction of how you guys feel about as we prepare that final budget. The one thing I do want to make sure that the board understands, and then also for me, is we're approving a budget, but as a project comes forward, for example, if tomorrow if you approve to use the adjusted operating fund balance piece of that for the election equipment, there are still other steps before the clerk treasurer purchases that election equipment. She will still need to come back forward with you guys with the project or the contract to be able to do that purchase. So we are looking at budget right now. This isn't approval to go forward and you never see it again. It is approval to set the budget there for departments to explore and see what they can do with those funds. And let's see. Also, please know that there are some ongoing projects that aren't necessarily listed in this presentation because the budget has already been set aside in prior years. For example, the Justice Center is not on next year's plan for projects because we're not planning on putting any new funding in next year. We just issued those bonds in this fiscal year. So it is the timing thing of new budget for next year for these capital projects.
Okay. I fail to get my question in before you move on sometimes. I think that's important to point out bullet point number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. Bullet point number 4. This is a plan for capital projects. The approval of the project will be brought forward to the BOCC for approval. I know when I served on the Parks and Rec Commission and on Senior Services before I was commissioner, Mr. Morgan always indicated that we need to have these projects in the projection, but but that doesn't mean that the funding is available, and the funding will only be accomplished if we are able to get a grant in that regard. But if we don't have it on the radar, it's hard to bring it up. So I appreciate that, but I think it's important for our public to understand that just because we have a big list and it's total over the period of time, $286 million, we don't have that money, and we're not going to have that money in the foreseeable future. And that's planned over a number of years. But until we actually have the funds and it comes before this board for approval, those don't go forward, right? So.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. And I am of the mindset too is that I think everything should be on the plan because there's a couple of things that it allows is even though we don't anticipate funding from what the tax base that we have, if there is a grant that comes forward, we already have it in our mind that this is a plan and the departments and the elected officials can go after those grants. Or if we have someone who wants to donate money to the county for whatever reason, we have it on the plan for that too. So. Yes. In this presentation here, in the backup is the whole 5-year plan. I only showed what was in for next year in this presentation. I did not show all 5 years, but that is in your backup. And we sorted this by projects that we would, either ongoing projects that we have built into the budget or we would like to build into the budget because there is funding for it. I'll go through them quickly. I do know the detail of departments and elected officials have spent a lot of time to provide a lot of detail of those projects in that capital improvement plan that is online for that to look at.
I know you didn't want us to single out questions, but we're trying to save money in the general fund. There's one of those items up there that are being funded through the general fund. Is there not a capital improvement fund for them to utilize to pay for the information technology annual switch replacement?
There is. This is actually on the bottom two are general fund expenditures. They are, even though they're capital, they're ongoing in nature. So they are. There's a plan for example, the sheriff to. Oh, sorry, not the bottom. There is. I thought that was the book. So there are two that are in the that are general fund, the IT and then also the sheriff vehicles. They are ongoing capital is how we've traditionally budgeted them because they're ongoing. Every year we need to replace switches. Every year we need to buy some vehicles for the sheriff's office. And so they're ongoing,
Why
not one
can't
time.
they come out of the capital improvement reserved fund or restricted fund?
We have spent this current capital improvement reserve, which is the ad valorem, that is to pay for our one bond payment for the Justice Center. For the medium-term bond payment. The longer term is out of the general fund.
Just so the reason we can't do it this year is because we're using the money for the Justice Center. So maybe in other years, when you have these things, that can go back, and we're not taking money from the general fund.
Certainly, yes, yeah. We have traditionally done it because they're ongoing, but I think those are great ideas to look at it in the future, yes.
Jenny Cartwright for the record. There are a lot of moving pieces to pulling this information together, and I do have a couple of updates to the materials that have been submitted. Both are related to the airport. So the project that you're looking at, the Install Taxiway A medium intensity lighting system for $565,333, that is actually an FY27 project that has some grant match. So we do not need your approval of that one today. It will come forward for next year's funding. It just had the amount was in FY26 incorrectly. It should be FY27. And then if you recall, the airport presented on the East Side Bathroom project. That was a $250,000 project each year between FY26 and FY29. That was unfortunately omitted from the materials, so that is still a project that is on their radar. It is currently unfunded, and we can provide additional details if necessary, but I just wanted you to know that was missing from the list, so we'll take one off, put one on, you'll have all the information.
I won't necessarily go through in detail in these things, but please, as you're reading through them, if you have any questions, again, but I will say the airport And the utility, those are enterprise funds, and so the fees that collected in those funds support the projects in those funds. We have two that have to deal with emergency management. 911 is there's a fire station alerting system that our emergency communications and the fire departments are working collaboratively of replacing how the fire stations or how the firefighters are alerted in the fire stations when there's a call in the middle of the night. And then the other piece is trying to ongoing chip away wherever we can at the public safety radio system upgrade. And we want to use some reserves that are in 911 to put into that project for next year. Again, most of these up here are to do with the enterprise funds. We do have and planned part of the regional transportation in RTC to fund the last bit that we had for the budget for the Moeller Parkway. That has been part of the plan to set aside money this year and set aside some RTC funds next year for the Moeller Parkway. Here's the sheriff vehicles right there that I was talking about. Stormwater projects.
I'm sorry, again, I
please.
hope this is okay to interrupt at this point on it, but if Mr. Park agrees to sell the property that we requested, or if we go through eminent domain, is that on this next year's budget or 27? And do we have it funded?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Jennifer Davidson, County Manager for the record. We have set aside sufficient funding for Mueller to cover those costs. They're included in the project account. We have, I believe, $15.6 million in cash for the project account, and in last speaking to the project team, they included that in their calculations. So we should not need to identify additional funding.
As we did with our budget hearings, let's be informal today because it's good to ask questions as we go. So.
The stormwater projects indicate that they are grant funding. When those grants are awarded is when Courtney or Stormwater Management will come forward and fund those. And so we will not build those into the budget until we have that specific grant awarded for that. And then we have a lot of projects that departments and elected officials have put as part of FY26 that they are seeking funding for. They are seeking grants, savings from any year that they can bring forward and to fund these projects. But they are currently unfunded. There's not any expectation or indication that we need to find funding to adopt the budget with. But we want, as Commissioner Gardner stated, we want those projects on the paper so we know that they're out there. That is the CIP presentation I have.
Is everyone good with the plan as presented with the revisions noted?
I'd like to see my Ranchos multi-trail funded.
I think they are seeking grant funding for that.
All you have to do is write us a check. We'll be glad to do it.
All right, we're good.
Thank you.
I'll write that check, and then Danny and I will go play basketball with it because it'll bounce so high.
Quickly to talk about changes in the budget since the last budget hearing. I mentioned, but I talk very fast, so it's hard to remember, but when we started the budget hearing, I mentioned that the property tax cap rate for commercial, we had built in at 8%. We found out from the state, I think the day of the budget hearings is actually 6.1%. I was concerned that I would have to come back and reduce that property tax projection. When the state issued their final projections with the centrally assessed and the unsecure, we were right with where we had budgeted. So there are no changes in property tax projection. So that's a relief. But,
I made light of what Commissioner Tarkanian has, and so I'm going to try to retract that a little bit.
Largest voting group over there.
Yes, I understand the need. Okay, I understand the need, and I wish we did have funding to to accommodate that. And hopefully we can continue to look for grant funds to accommodate that, because I believe, and I agree with you, it's a very important project for our county to try to accomplish down the road. I think it's important for 20% of our populace to be able to get into our community center in a safe manner without necessarily traveling roads. So
So we can count on your vote for an eminent domain vote, right?
well, now see, now you're making light of it, okay? And yeah.
We have also, we are recommending also reducing one FTE in the general fund. It is in the county manager's office. It is our, I'm not even sure the name of it, but it works for Eric as our communications specialist. We feel like the services of that position can be done through contract. And so we like to convert most of that to a contract cost, but then also save some general fund dollars. And then we are continue to work on the cost allocation plan. So we almost have that finished. We'll continue to work on that and build in any changes into the final budget for there. The next step we have.
I'm sorry. On cost allocation plan, allocating which costs?
The cost allocation plan allocates the general fund, costs in the general fund that have to do for departments that serve other funds. For example, HR, finance, county manager
Okay.
to some extent. Yeah.
Good. But before we leave that, I am concerned about the risk allocation. I'm not sure it's accurate. So I don't know if it's part of the cost allocation plan, but if it's not, I think it should be.
We have looked at the risk management fund, and the charges we have for risk management in total support that fund and the anticipated expenditures we have. The piece that I would like to spend the next year looking at is if we need to change the rates depending on the type of employee or the type of risk to the different funds. But how we traditionally have done it and what we've charged does support those expenditures for next year. But I would like to take the next year and really look to see if we still need this much dollar, but how we allocate it or how we charge it out.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, and we've had this discussion, and I think it's appropriate that basically, as I understand the cost allocation plan right now, it's kind of a universal formula across all departments, a set amount.
It is not. And when I have the final plan, I'd be happy to share it. Every
Okay.
department looks at their expenditures and looks at the best way those expenditures are shared. For example, IT and tech services, some of their costs are shared by FTE. Some are shared by the number of computers a department has. For example, county manager, some costs are shared by the number of agenda items because you only see departments when they have an agenda item. Not all departments are department heads. There are in HR, there are a piece of their costs that are allocated based on recruitments. So every department is different. They determine, and we work with them, the best way to accurately account for the time they spend for other funds.
Because I would indicate that there are departments that create a greater risk for us than other departments. And so it doesn't seem to me like they should be all allocated on an equal basis. I guess that's where we were trying
Yeah,
to
I
go,
think that's
right?
what you're going to look at. Yeah. Appreciate that. Thanks.
We'll continue to work on the budget. The couple changes that I know are coming is we're in negotiations right now with the deputies and sergeants. We'll continue to monitor the legislation at the state. We anticipate there is the one elected official bill that we think will have a fiscal impact if passed, and so we'll continue to monitor that. And then an exciting change that we're going to make that both Jennifer and I received a text from our assistant county manager is at the state legislature this morning, they had a hearing on the DCFS budget, and they have funded China Spring at the level we requested. So that will have the correct funding. So you'll see an update in the China Spring budget before we come back to the final budget. So those are updates that we're working on.
I will say that Jessica and Wendy have done excellent work, and I have been involved every step of the way on that, and it is excellent news.
Hot off the presses news. It was just this morning that they approved that. So yes.
Madam Chair, if I may.
County Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Jennifer Davidson, County Manager for the record. We owe so much thanks to so many individuals who have worked on this, but I do especially want to say thank you to Senator Titus. We have worked very closely with us. She has been a fierce advocate for China Spring, as have many members of the committee. But I would be remiss if we didn't say thank you to her.
And perhaps in the coming post-session weeks, we can acknowledge that or invite her follow through. Thank you.
That is what I have. If you have any questions or concerns for me.
Do you need action on anything?
We did do for possible action, so the board can give us direction, but no formal action or requested.
I feel like we came to consensus on the CIP, on the supplemental requests. I feel like you have good direction. I don't see that any action is needed. Okay, we will open for public comment. Ms. Duda, do you have public comment? All right. Mr. Ricker, any public comment from you? All right. Seeing no public comment, I will close public comment. Is that all? All right. Then with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
No, we have closing public comment.
Oh, yeah. Closing public comment. Over anything we have jurisdiction over, seeing none, I will close public comment and adjourn the meeting.